All right, so welcome everyone to our National Center for Computer Science Education November webinar. I am Pauline Lake. I'm the Curriculum and PD Coordinator for the center, where I work mainly with Mobile CSP and CS Awesome, two of our high school computer science curricula. We are here tonight to have a conversation around equity in CS or equity in CS education. And if you haven't joined our webinars previously, we typically pick a topic each month to discuss and share resources, mainly as a platform or a space for us to connect and just share and ask questions, bounce ideas off one another. But we also get the opportunity each month to hear from some special guests. So I'm going to introduce them in just a moment, our guests for November. I just have a couple reminders. So we are recording now, and this will be posted to our YouTube channel. If you would not like to be in the recording, feel free to turn off your camera, but we do welcome you to turn on your camera if you are feeling comfortable with doing so. I'm also going to enable the live transcription for those who may want to use closed captions. And if you have a question throughout the night, you are welcome to use the chat to share that. You can also use the raise hand feature at the bottom under reactions to indicate that you have a question, and I'll be happy to field those as we go through the night. So just a quick look at our plan. So we're starting off with just some welcome and introductions. We are going to hear from two awesome ladies at two different wonderful organizations, the Constellations Center for Equity in Computing and the Kapor Center. And again, this is all about talking about equity in computer science education. We'll share some resources at the end that you might want to check out when you have some extra time after the webinar. And then we'll close out with some time for Q&A. I know folks submitted questions via the Zoom registration. We'll try to take some time to answer those questions. But if you need to leave early, feel free to hop off. Again, we are recording, and we will make the recording available at the end. So again, my name is Pauline Lake. I'm with the National Center for Computer Science Education. We are joined tonight by Kalisha Davis, who is the CS Equity Curriculum Project Director at the Kapor Center. I'm just going to add Kalisha to our spotlight so she can say hello. And we also are joined by Lien Diaz, who is the Director of Educational Innovation and Leadership at the Constellations Center for Equity in Computing. So I'm adding Lien to the spotlight so she can say hello as well. We welcome you to introduce yourself in the chat. Feel free to let us know where you're joining us from tonight as far as location, and if you have any particular interest in equity in CS, what might that be? So feel free to pop that into the chat. I'm going to open it up to Kalisha and Lien. Do you have anything you'd like to add in this introduction portion?
Thank you, everyone, for having us this evening. It's a pleasure to be with you. I look forward to learning more about you and this organization that's hosting us this evening.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you for having me on tonight. I'm really excited to share and discuss and also learn from everyone that's on here regarding their work or our collective work on equity in computer science. So thanks for having me, Pauline.
Yeah. Awesome. So I see introductions are coming in. Looks like we have folks on the West Coast, the East Coast. If you're just joining us, feel free to drop your introduction into the chat. All right, I am going to hand it over to Lien.
Oh, okay. So I am I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and then figure out how I'm going to do this.
Let me know if there's anything you need.
Yeah, so first I'm going to find out where my presentation is. There it is. I apologize. I'm going to get this right. There it is. Hey, I hope that you can see that.
Yes.
And then I'm going to share. And then just give me a second because I need to switch my screens. Can you still see that or no?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or do you see my notes? That's what I was worried about.
No, we can see the slides.
Awesome. Okay, so so I just want to say that I have been very fortunate to be working at a center that that I helped start a few years ago at Georgia Tech. The center came about with a lot of work and collaboration with some other folks here that aren't here tonight. Charles Isbell, who's the current dean of the College of Computing at Georgia Tech, Cedric Stallworth, who is the dean of Enrollment, Outreach, and Community in the College of Computing, and Kamal Bob, who is now at Google, but is also serving as our executive director, and myself, who came together and had lots of conversations about, putting together or building this center. And so I just wanted to spend a couple of minutes talking about, the makeup of the center and our sort of foundational beliefs that we have been working under. And so I first want to say that we strongly believe CS education is a social justice issue. We, I mean, in terms of gender identity and racial and even economic equality, I mean, broadening participation itself is a social justice issue of our time. It really is about structures that oppress minoritized groups from entering into computer science. We talked a lot about that. We had a lot of discussions about what that is and why. And it's not enough for our minoritized groups of students to have access to quality computing. They also have to be afforded the support and the resources and the care to succeed in CS and in the tech workforce. And it is, it does affect upward mobility. And so we know, that one of the biggest barriers, was lack of qualified teachers. We had a lot of conversations about that. We also had a lot of conversations about the actual computer science courses. And I want to talk a little bit more about that later on in the presentation, because we do focus on the advanced computing courses, particularly AP Computer Science. And our rationale for that is because without an opportunity for our underrepresented students in computing to access and succeed in advanced computing, diversifying the workforce and diversifying tech is much more of a far reach. So those are some of the conversations that we had while we started up the center. CS education is a social justice issue. We also talked about our mission and landed on our mission being, we want to democratize computing because educational equality depends on an equitable infrastructure. And so everything that we do, every single part of the Constellation Center is rooted in this mission. So without further ado, I did want to introduce the direct team that I work with. We have a team of Constellations fellows that I believe some or all of them may be attending tonight. We have Sababu Barashango. He is the person in the middle circle Sorry about the order, but Terry Foster is down on the bottom left, and Yolanda Payne is at the top there. This team here is the expert team that serve as instructional coaches and work with teachers very directly in the classroom. They provide a lot of professional development, which is also has been key in our program and in the efforts that we've been working on. So as we have our conversations tonight, I hope they will join in on the chat if you have questions for them. This is really our flagship program, and it really is backed by this team, this awesome team that are working with teachers in schools all across the state of Georgia. All right, so what is it that this team does? And I really want to highlight it. I wanted to highlight this first because it is important. It was important for us from the very beginning to be very strategic about professional development. We didn't want to just send teachers to a summer PD, and Pauline and others on this call, they know that is important, but it is not really the right way to be supporting teachers by thinking that they can attend a 1 week long summer PD experience and then go into the classroom expecting them to be complete experts, right, in teaching computer science. So this team of fellows, they provide direct professional development with teachers inside and outside of the classroom. And when I did my calculations, they provide about 100 hours plus yearly for each teacher that they work with. Summer PD, of course, that's about 50 hours. Customized PD, we do that, it's approximately 20 to 24 hours. We also conduct a summit. We also provide funds for them to attend conferences like the CSTA conference. The fellows meet with teachers once or twice a week for about 45 minutes to an hour. And so when you add all of that up, it's about 100 plus hours of direct teacher support. And why is this important? It's important because we are relying on teachers to provide them this high quality, computer science experience in advanced computer science courses. If we're expecting to broaden participation, to diversify the tech workforce, we must be able to support teachers and develop their knowledge and build their capacity. And so the fellows have worked very hard over the last 3, almost 4 years now to develop their own expertise in coaching, in finding different ways to be culturally relevant in the classroom, to provide guidance on inclusive pedagogy in the classroom. And all of this put together has really worked well for us over the last 3 years. So in a nutshell, our strategy has been provide PD in advanced CS courses. We customize the professional development experience. And all along the way, of course, we're building a community at the local level. We've worked really hard to connect them to teachers across the state, and we're continually working to connect teachers at the national level, like with the CSTA chapter in Georgia and also at the national level. And I want to talk very briefly about what we've been doing specifically in Atlanta Public Schools, because this is a school district that, much like Chicago Public Schools, the demographics are very similar. But Atlanta Public Schools is a much smaller district, okay? Chicago Public Schools is like humongous. But nonetheless, the demographics and the situational context in terms of segregated schools and desegregated schooling are essentially very, very similar. Here was a school system in 2016 and 2017 where there was only one high school that was offering advanced computer science to about 20 students. What we've been working over the last 3 years is to change that landscape in Atlanta Public Schools. We empower teachers to offer advanced computer science courses. We help increase their teaching efficacy. And in the last 3 years, nearly 600 students have taken an APCS course, with about 65% of them taking an APCS exam. This compared to 4 years ago, where less than 20 students took an APCS exam. You know, that has been a humongous change and shift for the school system. I wanted to show you some data. I'm just going to kind of skip through this one part here, where we show the total enrollment of students in our program since since FY 2019, which is school year 2018-2019. Little over 100 students, over half of them took the exam. And each year we've been growing to where, as I mentioned earlier, nearly 600 students have gone through our program, and over 50% of them, I think it's like 52 or 54% of them, take an APCS exam, either APCS Principles or APCSA, because we do support both of those courses in our schools. But we still have a lot of work to do. I wanted to show this slide, and it may be hard to see it, but I'm happy to share these slides with you, Pauline, if you wanted to distribute them. This is important for us because this keeps us going. This slide, for me at least, tells me that we still have a long way to go. In Georgia, right, there are actually over 500,000 high school students, grades 9 through 12. You can see the demographics there. We do have an American Indian, Native American population. It's a small percentage, but we do have students who identify as Native American. You can see that the majority of our, it's in this category. There are a lot of white students, nearly 200,000 of them, but collectively, Hispanic, Black, Asian, and Native American students make up more than 50% of the high school student population in the state of Georgia. Okay, that it's closer to 55%, I think. But the number of students who participate in APCS is very, very, very small, extremely small. And this may not, this may not be a shocker, but it is a driver for us. And it keeps us really grounded, in our mission and the rationale for why the center exists. I also wanted to share some, key success factors that have been sort of like lessons learned along the way, for those that may be interested. We, like I said, strongly believe that our mission has to be grounded in principles of justice and equity. And our whole entire team is so passionate about that. So Babu, Terry, Yolanda, and the others who have helped start the center, they're very passionate about our mission. And of course, the second, success factor is I have to give credit to the team of fellows. They're equipped with multiple expertise in teaching and learning, but they've really dedicated and committed, their work from morning to whenever they end, to supporting teachers in the most equitable way possible. So having a team with the shared values, the same beliefs, passionate, and highly equipped, highly skilled is very important. Of course, administrators as well, if you have their backing and their full support, that is really, another key to any successful program. And community support. And then the last thing is, elevating the teaching profession. I can't stress this enough. I really have worked with my colleagues and the fellows to reconsider how we talk about the teaching profession, even at the college level, where, very traditionally, the professor or the teacher is the main source of information, continues to be the sage on the stage, so to speak. And I see shifts happening, but we really need to do a much better job at helping teachers become the leaders that they can be. That we should be giving teachers a lot more credit, and I believe different types of support to elevate this profession and empower them, to be successful in their schools or in their classrooms too. The last thing that I'll say is going back to putting together a team, whether it's at a center or in your department or at a school or at a district level. These fellows, they don't just show teachers and students that computer science is more than apps and games. That is important, right? More importantly, they help students, regardless of their socioeconomic background, regardless of their color of skin, regardless of their gender identity, they show students that CS is for them. You have to believe that computing knowledge is an equalizer for surviving in the modern world and economy. And this belief is central, really, for our students of color, for our girls in all of our schools. And I think the last thing I'll say is that I really do believe that if we do this right, that if we all work collectively towards the same goals, similar missions and beliefs, that we will be making an impact, a positive impact on our students. And it's going to take time. I know it's not going to happen overnight, but we have to do something. We have to do it in order to give our kids a chance. And I think computing education, I do believe that computing education is one of those areas in their schooling that can give them that competitive edge and those skills in whatever discipline they go into. Computing skills will give them that leverage that they need to survive and be successful in our modern world. Pauline, that's all I had in terms of slides to share. I'm happy to answer questions now, or if you want, Kalisha to present next. Let me exit out of that. And
yeah, thank you, Lynn. I think if folks have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. So we can include them in a discussion at the end. I think one question I think would be great to ask now. A lot of the questions that we got in the Zoom registration had to do with wanting to know more about effective strategies, and I think we can come back to that later. But I would love to know, for a teacher, we have teachers that are in our communities. What would you say would be like the place to start if you had to suggest to them a place to start if they're looking to increase equity in their classroom and that's a goal in their school? Where would they start? What would they do? What would you recommend for them?
Yeah, I know that this may seem like common sense, but I think, the first thing, at least in my mind, it would really be to convene the right people, to come together and like I said, having the shared goals or shared beliefs, and believing that computing education is important and can make a positive difference or a positive impact in their students' lives. I think that is super, super important. And so it's really finding the right people, finding like-minded individuals that would be willing to work together, to build out that program is super important. Too often, and you know this, Pauline, we run into situations where, a principal will say, hey, I want to do computer science. We need to do this. And then turn around and automatically, volunteer, a teacher or somebody to teach computer science. And sometimes they feel like that's the only option that they have. So I get it. But that's very hard. It's very challenging. We know that there's not enough teachers still with the proper credentialing or requirements that are needed in many states. Like here in Georgia, you need an endorsement or you need a certification. So many teachers have been asked to teach computer science when that is not their background to do so. And I know in many areas, that's where they're finding themselves to be. And so that's why I believe that if that is the situation, we really need to rethink how we support teachers who are new to computer science or, new to teaching computer science and having a different background, and how we do that to develop their capacity, I think is super important. You have to build in that equity from the very beginning, the equity approach from the very beginning, and not have it be an afterthought, of course. So it's really finding the right people that will share that same goal, to make that happen. And I think after that, though, quite honestly, I think after that, you have to have the right, the right budget, the right funding. And maybe I'm being too pragmatic or too practical, but these are things that we have seen that really help a program, excel and succeed. If you are putting in the right resources, it's of course teachers, it's of course professional development, but if any program has, the administrative support and the funding and the budget, that program will have a much better chance at succeeding. So those are just, I guess, those are practical things that I can think of at this point.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I know I haven't presented just yet, but I think I appreciate what Lynn just shared with you. And I would suggest also that teachers spend some time focusing on their own self-identity and reflection that will allow them to be in a better position to serve young people in this way, because this requires a lot of meaningful engagement and relationship building and trust building within your classroom, within your school community. So it really starts from within. And then I think then you move into identifying the champions within your school that can help you collaborate in this work. And don't forget young people. I'll talk a little bit about the importance of youth engagement and leadership within classrooms and school communities. But this work cannot happen in isolation. Educators, we know that you are dealing with a lot. You're carrying a very heavy load. So when you can identify people that are in the school and even outside of the school, there's so many organizations that work in alignment with what's happening in classrooms to help provide those additional supports. And they have flexibility to do some experimentation and engage students in different ways. I just encourage all educators to consider that possibility as a place to start.
Yeah, I totally agree, Kalisha. Thank you so much for mentioning that. I think you made me think of one other thing that I would just like to throw in the mix here, because I can't wait to hear your presentation. But there, there's also something that we've been moving towards here at the center, and that is, really to provide teachers and students and other educators at all levels, that for lack of a better word, that freedom to be successful, to, say, hey, we are successful in our computer science program. And I think that once we can show educators and teachers and students that they can be successful, they take it on their own. They take it to the next level on their own, right? And so that's really the work that we're trying to get to. And we, in many cases, our teachers have already shown us signs of, that sort of, growth and capacity and freedom, because they're doing things on their own. And once they get to that stage, I think, that is a sign of success. Yes, we still have a lot of work to do towards, reaching equity and shifting the demographics and the landscape in our schools and in the tech workforce. But I do think that, making those strides where they can experience the successes themselves in their schools, in their own environment, makes a huge difference. And particularly for our Black, Hispanic, and Native American students, I think that is so important to be able to acknowledge, to be able to see, acknowledge, and acknowledge.
Yeah, thank you both. It makes me so excited for afterwards and we kind of dive a little deeper into the conversation. I do see that there are a few teachers on the webinar tonight. So a question I would have for you in the chat before I hand it over to Kalisha maybe is, are you struggling? Do you feel like you're struggling with something in particular as you are trying to promote equity in your school and in your classrooms? Is there something that you feel is an obstacle that you would like to share? Feel free to share that in the chat. And Kalisha, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Pauline. Hello again, everyone. I want to start this a little differently because there's some news that's still on my heart. I'm processing this afternoon. I am based in Michigan, just outside of Detroit, which is where I grew up. That's my hometown. And I'm about 50 minutes north of, unfortunately, a school shooting that took place this afternoon. And we lost 3 young people at Oxford High School, and 6 other young people and adults were injured. And it really is heartbreaking, and it's still very sobering as we think about how vulnerable school communities still are. And it is an ongoing reminder for me why we need to continue to lend our support to ensuring that every young person has the opportunity to learn in a safe, supportive, and caring environment. So I don't know all of the details just yet, but this is work that just requires all of us. So I'm really glad to be in conversation with you all this evening. Please send loving energy to Oxford High School and the families, because all of them are impacted, and the community that surrounds that high school tonight. So let me try to recalibrate just a little bit. I am going to share some slides with you. Let me see. It's my turn to get into this COVID life that we are all living with our virtual presentations. All right, can everyone see that? See my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so I was invited to join the Kapor Center in April of 2020, right in the midst of the initial shock and onset of the global pandemic that we're all still living through. And I learned really quickly that Kapor is a place that's not only dedicated to meaningful social change, but it has the leadership and intentionality to see that change happen in communities in really important ways. So I've been really grateful and pleased to be working closely with Dr. Allison Scott and an amazing collective of professionals that very much like me care deeply about young people in this environment, um, and focus on their ability to leverage computer science and tech in ways that help ensure their successful future. That aligns in so many other important efforts that are happening in regards to young people finding their voice, gaining insights and supports that really allow them to achieve their dreams. So since the beginning of February 2020, we've made some really meaningful progress. And I'm here to share all of that with you and learn a little bit more about your own work. So here's the agenda that we're going to kind of go through quickly. This evening, I want to talk with you about the creation of the Equitable Computer Science Curriculum Initiative, and ultimately what led us to create the culturally responsive and sustaining computer science framework. That particular work includes 6 core components that articulate opportunities for change in classrooms and school communities. And then we are going to just briefly glance at our efforts regarding implementation and adoption through collaboration and partnerships. So these are the words of our fearless and wonderful leader, Dr. Allison Scott, who has spent more than a decade dedicated to the mission of achieving equity in K-12 computer science education. She strongly believes that technology and computing education are at the center of the fight for racial justice and our nation's future. And although we are living in a technological age, unfortunately, even in 2021, the disparities that exist between those that have access and those that do not, to even the most basic resources, like I'm talking about devices, broadband, and experienced educators, those disparities are ever present. And of course, the pandemic really exacerbated the need, particularly in predominantly minoritized and historically marginalized communities. So while this isn't new information in the field, and there have been efforts to address these key challenges in computer science education, they still haven't accomplished everything that advocates really hope for. So what's the background informing this work, and how are we faring so far? To date, 49% of high schools in the United States do not offer computer science courses to their students. And that's a slight improvement from 2020, where it was about 51%, but it's still low when we consider all the ways in which the world is now digitized. So many of us have the need for flexibility in working in person when it's safe, but also remotely when it's necessary. And that includes students who are entering into a variety of fields that require technological skill and proficiency to be successful. This slide further breaks down the significant equity gaps in access to computer science courses by school demographics, which negatively impact the opportunity the low-income students and students of color have to participate in computer science education. I'll just quickly note that high underrepresented minority schools are nearly twice as less likely to offer any computer science course, and 3 times less likely to offer AP computer science courses compared to schools with low numbers of underrepresented students. And so that's Black, Latinx, Native American students. Additionally, low-income schools are less likely to offer computer science courses and 4 times less likely to offer AP courses based on their income. So despite the growth in computer science availability over the past few years, these gaps have remained. We see similar inequities in participation in AP computer science A courses. And we see similar trends in the breakdown of Black, Latinx, Native American students and girls. So what about educators? In the summer of 2020, last year, we conducted a national survey in partnership with the Computer Science Teachers Association and gained the perspective of nearly 3,700 teachers from across the country who shared their challenges and opportunities with us in computer science ed, and that they were carrying a heavy burden. 35% of teachers didn't have the supplies that they thought were sufficient for them to be able to teach computer science. And I'm talking about equipment and the space and supplies. 27% felt limited in their subject knowledge and expertise. 39% not only seeing the importance, did not see the importance in covering computing's role in perpetuating biases related to racism and sexism and other inequities in the classroom. So these, the numbers that you're looking at here are also really important to capture. So I wanted you to have a chance to reflect on those numbers, but we were able to gather a lot of really important information from that landscape work. So this work is really, it goes beyond access, and it's really, our focus is on ensuring a more high quality and elevated experience in education that gives students the opportunity to participate in computer science courses, and teachers who have the opportunity to be better prepared and equipped with the pedagogical strategies to engage all students, utilize quality instructional practices, and incorporate curriculum that aligns with students' interests, identities, and their cultures. Okay, so this is a bit about the culturally responsive and sustaining computer science educational framework, which we aim to serve as a meaningful tool designed for K-12 computer science educators. Now, some of you are hopefully familiar with the Equitable Computer Science Curriculum Initiative. I'm going to drop that, our website, into the chat if you haven't had a chance to visit us. Perfect. Thanks, Abby. I appreciate that. This is a multi-year endeavor designed to create more culturally responsive and sustainable practices in K-12 computer science education. And it is well over a year in the making. We're actually going into a full 2 years. And despite the fact that we've entered this work at the height of a global pandemic, deep political divide, racial tension, and social unrest, we've made some really great strides in our efforts. So this is a list of project activities that represents where we started. With our first key task of conducting a national survey of educators to determine the landscape of culturally responsive curriculum and instruction. So that effort, like I mentioned just earlier, was with 3,700 teachers. And I'm pleased to share much of what we've detailed here that led us to our survey and the development of our framework. We've been able to see come to fruition. This includes identifying and recruiting the incredible minds that formed 2 national advisories, which includes one of our presenters this evening, Lien, Diaz. And this group is really extraordinary. They have expertise in a variety of different disciplines, including racial equity, social justice, community building, education, and computer science education. And they have such wonderful insights and experiences that really have provided the foundation for the project's efforts to achieve collective impact among computer science educators, researchers, policymakers, students, and other advocates in K-12 school communities. Now, our second advisory is the Equitable Computer Science Initiative's National Student Leadership Team. So this is a dynamic cohort of high school students representing 7 states and 9 communities throughout the United States that joined us for a variety of thoughtful discussions exploring computer science and technology, leadership development, and classroom culture, as well as the power of youth and adult partnerships and the key characteristics of supportive school environments. These students have proven themselves time and time again that they are passionate about this work, and they can really articulate a vision for achieving equity in computer science classrooms for themselves and for their peers. So we have been really pleased to be able to work with this cohort, and we're excited about forming our next cohort. We've also developed a growing network of like-minded professionals that attend our monthly convenings in the form of our national webinar series and receive our ongoing communications and available resources. This work is deeply informed by a number of incredible leaders in K-12 computer science education, a few of which are named here. Their work aligns with our efforts, and it's allowed us to think more carefully about the type of impact that we hope to make and how we aim to serve. All of this has led to the creation of a comprehensive framework that offers insights to the field that underline the critical need for culturally responsive and sustaining practices in the computer science classroom and schools in general, that lend to an intentional and persistent investment in Black, Latinx, Native American, and other historically marginalized students and their communities. This resource is research-driven. It was reviewed by over several months by not only the member of both our national advisories, but a collective of other K-12 computer science educators and national experts in equity, inclusive, and culturally responsive teaching, and a number of well-respected and recognized leaders in the field. So in releasing this publication, our intention is to highlight the framework's two key elements: a shared definition of culturally responsive, sustaining computer science pedagogy, and an articulated set of core components for implementing culturally sustaining computer science pedagogy in school communities. So this slide articulates our shared definition that aims to move beyond access to computer science courses, but to ensure that every student has the opportunity to be inspired and thoughtfully engaged, to speak to their interests, identities, cultures, and validate their place in the computer science classroom. So this is really beyond even just computer science. This is broader. We want to be able to help young people understand that they have an opportunity to do amazing things, whatever they pursue. And as we develop our branding strategy for this work, we're pleased to be able to develop projects, including our video, which is a reimagined computer science education that allows people to understand more about the possibilities. We don't have time because it's like a 7-minute video, but I will drop in the our YouTube link, and you are welcome to take a look at your leisure. Let's see. All right. Okay, so let's see. So here's a breakdown of the 6 core components. There are 6 actionable strategies that inform our work as we move forward. And that includes acknowledging the role of racism and white supremacy and its manifestation in computer science education, ensuring that inclusive and equitable classroom cultures are co-created to create meaningful learning experiences for students and to ensure that students belong regardless of their ethnicities and their backgrounds and income, developing pedagogy and curriculum that's challenging and aligned with K-12 computer science standards and holds a high expectation for students that are relevant to their experiences, interests, and cultures. We want to shine a light on student voice and student agency and encourage self-determination so that they can continue to be meaningful contributors to the learning experience in the classroom. We want families and communities to be considered as an asset in learning culture. And we want to ensure that there's a diverse array of experts who are invited to the classroom to intentionally expose students to a variety of computing professions and careers and opportunities. So we hope that each component in this framework will serve as a resource to educators and help them directly inform their instructional practices, curriculum development, and approaches for implementing equitable opportunities for K-12 computer science education. So this, in addition to our landscape study and a brief that we created offering early findings from that landscape work as it related to the global pandemic, are a few of the resources that we already have available to people that are interested in learning more. So finally, I'll share just some of the highlights as far as what we aim to achieve with this work. We want this framework to be adopted with integrity in computer science curriculum and professional development. We want to see this as a tool that's integrated into STEM and computer science teaching education programs. We want the framework to be shared with families and community members with actions for advocacy. We want to see framework implementation and impact that is measured with rigorous mixed methods data collection and findings from the field. And we want the framework to be shared at key educational conferences, which is something that we've been doing since we released it this summer and will continue to do. So this is how we've categorized our implementation activities. They are organized by curriculum, teacher education, teacher professional development, partnerships, and knowledge building. And we want to invite you so please stay connected with us as we move forward. We are just about to, literally, as in tomorrow, to go into some deep and long sessions related to strategic planning that will hopefully allow us to offer a variety of different opportunities for partnership and engagement and learning into 2022. So I don't want to take us too far over time, but it's been a pleasure sharing this with you. I hope that it was useful to you, and just please stay connected with us as we move forward.
Thank you, Kalisha. If folks have questions, feel free again to use the chat. In a moment here, I think we'll have an open conversation. You could feel free to unmute as well or raise your hand if you have questions. One question that came to mind in the end there, Kalisha, was looking at the implementation and the table that you had and how you broke it down. And so at the center, we have our two high school curricula, our two high school programs, one for CSP and one for CSA. And there are other providers that are out there. How are you hoping that they implement the framework?
So great question. So when it comes to curriculum providers and that type of collaboration, we are actually examining the possibility of developing some type of cohort model for curriculum providers. So we are currently experimenting with 2 cohorts of 13 educators from across the country that are led by my colleague, Shana White, that are diving really deeply into the framework to be able to unpack each one of the core components and understand its relevance to their school communities, to their work, to their classrooms, and they're working together to be able to hopefully by that work will end in May. By next spring, really have some thoughtful insights and feel encouraged around this notion of achieving equity in education. And so that's what we've talked about as a possibility for curriculum providers as well, is to identify a way to bring various people together to work in community with one another, to dive more deeply and address some of the more difficult questions. Because what we never want to do, which is why we've kind of delayed releasing, completing and releasing some additional materials such as rubrics. Like that's a question that comes up often from educators, like, do you have a rubric? And we totally understand that interest, but we don't want this to become a checkbox situation. We want more meaningful levels of engagement. So we're thinking very carefully about how we do that. And we look forward to continuing to learn and share as we learn more.
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. Do other folks have any questions? I'm gonna go ahead and, if it's okay, Kalisha, I'm gonna bring Lynn back into the spotlight here. So I was just looking again at the Zoom questions that came in and wanted to go back to the common question that seems to be coming up, which is about strategies, and maybe just open it up to both of you and say what are some strategies that the educators who are watching this recording could start with. We have the framework that they at least could start looking at. Kalisha mentioned earlier, looking at your own personal beliefs and starting with working on your relationships with students. Are there other strategies that you would suggest for them with the work that you've been doing?
Well, I'll chime in real quick on this. And I also just learned that there is one of the Constellations fellows that is attending tonight. So I'm hoping that he might be able to maybe chime in, or even if it's in the chat. But one of the things that came to mind with that question, Pauline, was when we first started working with teachers, again, our work was centered around supporting teachers and working with teachers specifically that were new to teaching computer science. One of the things that the fellows did was we did a lot of modeling and co-teaching in the classroom. And just being able to, have that opportunity to take a look at what was working in the classroom. There's so much that could be learned and unpacked, from those kinds of experiences. Co-teaching, which is different from modeling, but there are a lot of lessons that could be drawn from an experience like that. So whenever possible, even if there's another teacher that's not teaching computer science, if it's possible to have, some kind of support, even if it's just for one period, having a teacher, a friend, or a colleague that can help out with one of the lessons, and collaborating and working together on at least one, class period can really, provide a lot of opportunities for a teacher to do some of that, reflecting and rethinking and reorganizing, of an activity or a lesson. I know that can't happen every day or all the time, but I think every once in a while, having that opportunity to talk through an activity or a lesson, just with another teacher or another friend, a friend or a colleague in the same building, I think is something that we are looking into and seeing how we might be able to provide more of those kinds of opportunities. Because again, as Kalisha was talking about, having some time to look within, even with this framework, this culturally responsive and sustaining, CS framework, teachers have to have an opportunity to do that in order to really fully internalize and absorb all of that information to shift mindsets and beliefs. I think real life, or like in the moment teaching, is like that too. Just having that time to reflect and having someone to just be able to be a sounding board even, can help. And so we're rethinking, refocusing, I guess, on how to be able to provide more of those kinds of opportunities for teachers.
Yeah, I would agree with everything that Lynn just said. I think when educators and even people who are interested in advocating for more opportunities for equity in CS, I think when you form community, learning communities, different types of forms of collaboration, it opens up possibilities. So if it's possible for educators, especially within their own schools, because they all, they understand what's happening within the school itself and where there are needs and where there are potential roadblocks and challenges. If they can do more than just in isolation, as I was sharing earlier, I think it really makes a significant difference. And also our students, our student leaders, that was one of the first things that they said is that, ask us, we want to be helpful to our educators, to our teachers. Sometimes we see them like, especially early on when, Zoom and all these other platforms became the way of teaching, especially virtually, the students saw the teachers, struggling and they wanted to help, but they didn't always feel comfortable being able to step into the role to say, oh, I can help you fix that. Or, because supposedly, the teacher is the person that sets the tone, is the leader, is the voice of authority. And that doesn't necessarily have to be true, because everyone who comes into the classroom has a variety of different experiences that offer collective wisdom that can be really useful. So I think thinking a little bit differently is certainly a one way to begin to eat this gigantic elephant.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think my experiences in education have been also in math and science, and I um, I kind of relate to being a new teacher and having to maybe try something new or working with teachers. And, as Sababa was mentioning in his comment, trying to step out of their comfort zone to try something new. Um, uh, Understanding that students and adults also learn in different ways, different modalities, things of that nature. That is also a challenge, and finding ways to help teachers and other educators to try new things, to be more inclusive, to be more relevant, culturally relevant, to be more equitable in the classroom. That's sort of the crux of the work. That I think needs to happen better. And Polly, something that just came to mind was in terms of strategies. There in AP courses, right? There are the set of endorsed curricula for these AP CS courses, and as Kalisha mentioned, that their work is part of their work is also trying to work with the curriculum developers to be more conscious and more direct in addressing inequities and racial injustices. I think that we need to rethink and relook. And not relook and review these endorsed curricula to see what might be done to address those issues. And so in terms of strategy, I really do think that it has to start with the intent or the goals that we want for our students in these schools. Curriculum is absolutely important, right? Curriculum matters. We know that matters. But it's the teachers in the classrooms that are making those kinds of decisions every day, in the classrooms. And so I think, being more intentional about integrating, resources that can help them be more equitable in classrooms, I think is a good start as well too.
Yeah, I think this is a great time. I know we can talk about additional resources too. So in the chat, I put our site, inclusivcsteaching.org. It's still a work in progress from the center, but focusing on some of the strategies that we highlight in our professional development with our mobile CSP and CS Awesome teachers, and hoping that they can take those back into the classroom. So, this is still a work in progress, and I think there's definitely room for additions there, even for the work that you all are doing to be included there for our teacher communities. But we also have an equity section on there that has our student recruitment plan handbook and some of the strategies there. So just to address the questions about other strategies, that is a place that I would invite you, if you're interested, to look at that handbook that has the strategies, and additional resources are linked in there as well. Are there any questions from the audience? I did see in the chat, Sababu had mentioned being encouraged to step out of your comfort zone to try new things. I think that ties back to what was being said earlier about teachers not being trained specifically in CS2, and they may have the experience with teaching some other subject, and they're coming over to computer science and having to be open. And we talk in our professional development about the roller coaster ride that they go through, the roller coaster of emotions as they embark on learning not only the new concepts, but also learning the pedagogy that goes with the concepts, and having that open mind and embracing the fact that there's going to be challenges along the way. I think it also ties into what both of you said earlier, the sage on the stage versus the guide on the side approach, and being willing and comfortable to let your students know that you don't have all the answers, and that you are open to having them share their expertise with you, and their classmates, is a great way to have their voices included and build relationships with them as well. Is there anything else that you all would want to share? I think we're getting here to just to be wrapping up.
I don't have anything else planned, to share, but I will, I'll just say a little bit about, maybe just share some of next steps of what, we are planning on working on. And I mentioned earlier about how the fellows have really worked hard to build inclusive communities and classrooms in the schools that they're working with. And with that, for us, the next phase is really honing in on building student identity and a sense of belonging for Black, Hispanic, and I really do wish we had more Native American students or access to more Native American students in our schools, which we're working on, at a larger scale. But really looking at implementation, not just with curriculum, not just with pedagogy, but also including student agency, involving their interest and their direction, in the teaching and learning process of computer science. I think is all of that combined are things that we are very interested in doing some research around, so that we can get to the heart of the matter when it comes to students feeling like CS is for me, right? that's what we want. Ultimately, we want to see more students be able to say that. And I don't mean that I don't mean that we are promoting for all kids to major in computer science. We know that that's not, a reality either. But for students to be able to truly say, hey, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I belong here. And if I had all the right opportunities, I know I could succeed. For a student to get to that point takes a lot, to happen, particularly in a lot of our, low resource schools and low socioeconomic, communities. It takes a lot for students to be able to get to that point. But that's sort of the next phase, next level work, I think, that we're heading towards. And just being able to be part of these conversations with the Kapor Center, with the National Center for Computer Science Education and other organizations, I think that all of those lessons and resources, I think, we'll be able to leverage to get to that next level of that work there.
I would agree. Thank you so much, Lynn, for all the ways in which you show up every day and focus on this issue and work with your team to be able to create more opportunities for young people. I know how passionate you are about this, and have really enjoyed being able to work in partnership with you and to also learn from the experiences and your leadership on the ground in Georgia. So thank you. To everyone, to Pauline, thank you for this invitation. I think this is how you continue to make strides that have a ripple effect in school communities across the country. You have small conversations, you offer ideas and resources, and you stay the course. You maintain the integrity around the work, and aim to help inspire others and offer resources that help other people that are in the trenches do the good work that they want to do and continue to aspire to do. So yeah, Kapor Center is certainly here to be as supportive as we can be. We're still learning about this work and what really matters on the ground specifically. Like, we have certainly been informed by wonderful experts, but as we test these ideas, as we have more conversations, our intention is also to form some learning communities around this work in the next year. We're excited about the ways in which we can reach more young people and really encourage them to be confident in computer science and technology, to know that regardless of what their goals are as far as their career and in their life, that they certainly have the capacity to take on this type of field and be successful, and turn it on its head and focus on areas that they believe are most important in serving. Because this is these are skill sets that can really change a variety of different ways in which people look at the world. So and young people, they're already doing it. We just need to get out of their way and make sure that they're fully informed. So thank you all this evening for having us.
I appreciate you both joining and sharing the amazing work that you all are doing. And I think it's definitely still, as Kalisha said, just taking strides at this larger goal that we're trying to accomplish, and that every conversation matters, no matter how big or small it is. And so thank you again for joining us, and thank you to those who joined us live. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out. We will make sure that the slides and the recording are they're shared, and we will post this to our YouTube channel. Thank you.